Hello, and welcome to the RPG Showcase presented by Geek Getaway. I'm Steven, and joining me today is
Dan.
Dan. Yes, first time I'm actually learning his name.
I figured we'd go with the actual name.
Weirdly enough, the third Dan I
Gotta
know
make sure
in
it's
my
not.
in my in my in my tabletop RPG sphere. Today we're looking at a little game. The RPG showcase, the whole idea of it's supposed to be that we're going to look at various games you've probably never heard of, or if you have, you probably are wondering how does it play, how good is it. We're just going to go through the game, through the games that we look at, sort of go over character creation, setting, how it plays, all that sort of stuff. Sort of giving our thoughts on it, sort of showing what it's like, so that you can come to your own conclusions for if you would like to play it or not, and if it's worth looking into. But the whole idea is to mostly get sort of like we said, showcase all these games because there is so much in our industry that doesn't get any attention, and we want more games to be looked at and shown.
We have quite different opinions on many things too for tabletops. So
Yeah, so we're gonna get into some interesting. We'll get into some interesting discussion and territory, but for the most part, we want you to come to your own conclusions on what you may like, and that's why we're presenting it. We're presenting what it does. We have our own opinions, but you can have yours too. So the first game that we're looking at today, we're looking at Abandon All Hope. This game is a game about space prison horror. As you can probably tell, somewhat, at least the horror aspect from this lovely cover art. It's fantastic. It's got, prison, it's got in a spaceship, got demons, got prison gangs, robots, guards, all sorts of fun stuff. We're,
family friendly. Bring your kids.
yeah, do that. Don't do that. Don't bring the kids to this one, guys. So, I guess let's just get started. We're going to start off by sort of going into a bit of the setting stuff. Um, Dan, do you want to handle this, or do you want me to handle this?
Okay, so I haven't actually gotten to play it, but from everything I've read, the setting is essentially Earth is a golden age utopia at this point. It's a meritocracy, and the government has decided that anyone who does not fit their vision is an undesirable. They have all been arrested for whatever reason they've just made up, even, and thrown on a prison ship, the Gehenna, um, which has been sent on a interstellar voyage.
Oh,
During that voyage, the it just disappears.
yes. So I'll go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not great on the background detail usually, but
but before we do, I'm gonna say this game was published by RPG Objects in 2010, and it's written by Dominic Covey and Miguel de Dios. So, if you're interested, check them out. They're pretty good, and you can still get this. You can still buy this game from Amazon, I believe, if you want a physical copy. And they also sell PDFs of the core book and all the supplements on their website. All right. So basically, if we a little bit more detail on the history, like Dan said, the whole idea is that Earth's in a utopia era after a pretty much a big world war. All the governments got together and formed one worldwide government, and the way they achieved their quote unquote peace was saying, "Hey, anyone we don't like, let's arrest all of them, put them on a big ship, and just shoot it off into space where we won't have to worry about them anymore." And now the problem is their definition of criminal got was absurdly extended. Like, hey, were you a sol? Did you happen to be a soldier who fought in the last war? Too bad, you're a murderer now. Do you have violent thoughts that are revealed by a psychologist? Too bad, you're a murderer now. Hey, were you someone who protested the new government because you didn't like how they were operated? Too bad. You're aboard the space prison. Just did you deal in drugs or sex traffic or sex work? Yeah, you're also out of here.
One of the
Literally every.
examples was even literally a teenager who spray painted on a billboard.
Did you spray paint on a billboard? Too bad. Space you go. Um, or another example, they said, did you express your thoughts about the government, maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time, that they didn't necessarily like? To space you go. Yeah, it's bad. So, as such, end up with a lot of different sorts of people all aboard this space prison ship, heading off into deep space, never to be seen again. Now the thing is the whole idea is this ship's been on its voyage for a while, and
5 years, I believe.
5 years, and it's gone into space hell, quite literally. It somehow has just made its way
Another dimension.
It's made its way into another dimension, which is literally just hell, and there's demons invading the ship. The ship's lockdown has been lost. The prisoners are running rampant. There's demons all over the place, and the robot custodians that are run by an AI warden of the ship are probably going to try to lock you up again, whether you want to or not, and it's going to be bad. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. There's lots of things. There's even some extra little goodies, plot and meta plot and other things wise, that pop up in some of the adventure books. I won't spoil them here, but definitely look into into the various adventures, because they got some cool stuff there for GMs to potentially use for their campaigns. So let's get into how to play the game. It's a pretty simple system. Dan, do you want to handle this part?
I'm trying to find the page. This one doesn't actually...
65 of the PDF.
Yeah, it's a really short book.
It is a very short book, but it honestly works. Everything works, and it gives you a lot to work with, too. They were very...
Oh, wow, it just goes straight into combat. It doesn't have...
Yeah.
It doesn't list it as gameplay. It just goes straight into combat. That's why I wasn't finding it.
Yeah, so basically the basic role is actually I think the basic role is said in character, right before character creation or something. It's really short. But basically the whole idea is that yeah, here we go. Checks are off here on page 13. Checks are just roll a d12 versus your attribute, and if you roll below it, then congrats, you did it. That's pretty much it.
Yep, that's very simple.
It's really, really, really simple. There are some they do build upon this. Combat is a whole thing, and combat has some nice. Let's get into combat. Combat is pretty simple too, but it has some nice depth to it. Because
combat's where the meat of the rolling is, if it's not just check against your attribute.
Yeah, exactly. Where did I say that was?
65.
65.
I actually completely missed that because it's just a little bit. I completely missed that.
Really, really short. But yeah, so the combat is basically just roll for initiative. It's a d12. Adding what combat does is it flips it in a way. Instead of you rolling a die against your attribute and trying to roll low, you roll a die and add in your attribute, and it becomes an additive system for wanting to roll high. So it works. It flips it, but it works well.
And you can use traits. You have all kinds of options. So it does expand quite a bit depending on what you've picked and done with your character.
We'll get into that in character creation. But yeah, even without traits, basically, so you roll initiative, you have an action, you have a move, you have an action, and you have a move, I believe. It's pretty simple.
Movement and attack or use trait.
Movement is also standardized, oddly enough. It's just standard. You can move 30 feet or 6 squares on a battle mat and still use an attack or some other secondary action. Or you can double move, and that's it. So, and your fighting is just roll d12, add your prowess attribute. And that goes for everything, whether it be fist fighting or using a gun or whatever. It all is pretty streamlined. So if you like lighter weight systems that have
It all
depth,
uses prowess.
it all
Even the
uses
guns.
prowess, even the guns. So if you have a good prowess, you're the fighter.
I'd expect reflex to be possible with the guns.
Nope, it's just prowess. Reflexes is only for defense. When you attack someone or when you are attacked, the defense roll is d12 plus reflexes. So it's always going to be d12 plus prowess versus d12 plus reflexes, and that's the combat. So if you like lighter weight systems that have depth, like that are easy to be accessible but have depth to them, you're gonna like this, because this is very light, but it also gives you a lot of options of what you can do in combat. Like, they have some options here listed, such as charging. If you charge in, then you get a +2 bonus to your damage.
Only if you have melee.
Only if you're using melee. If you and a buddy corner someone, they get a +1 bonus to their defense roll as long as they are cornered. Because they're spurred on by desperation.
Yeah, there's a lot of mental components.
There's delaying, there's disengaging, there's dragging, ganging up, and that's another thing about the cornering. Is if any character or creature that finds herself alone and adjacent to two or more enemies in melee combat is considered to be ganged up on. When this happens, she must split her attention between her enemies, resulting in her using a dice one step down from her normal defense. So when you take a penalty in this, you drop the dice type instead of taking a flat penalty. But if you get a bonus, usually you also step the dice up to like a d20. If you get ganged up on, then you're going to take a penalty of d12 to a d10. They have information on moving through people, picking up items, reloading, standing up, surprise attacks, which is great, throwing weapons, and
throwing weapons are actually done at disadvantage, or not disadvantage, but a penalty.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. It keeps it pretty simple. I mean, like, combat is covered in 2 pages. Granted, there's lots of options you can get from your character stuff, but overall, it's a really simple system. Just d12, roll below, and then d12 and add an attribute for combat. It's pretty great. And it's weird because it belies how much you can do with that, because like I said, we'll get into this with the traits, but there's a lot of options you can get into with combat depending on how you build your character. So let's get into... Enough of that. Let's get into character creation, and then we'll get into some of the other like bits and pieces that you can do with the game that are pretty cool. So
character creation is very interesting in this.
So why don't you lead us off with how do you make your character?
So when you create a character, you have to you start with rolling your convict number.
Yeah.
Which it's a 7-digit number. You get it by rolling 7 d10s. And this actually determines quite a bit for your character. It determines your age. It determines some of the traits you can get. It can block out or grant you the ability to take certain ones based on the ones you get.
What your status is, yeah.
Yeah,
and
I think it'll even affect your stats.
It does. It does in fact affect your stats.
Yes, it does. Okay. It also affects your mental stats. Yeah. Because you can start with guilt.
Well, let's explain that when we get to the Ludovico gauges.
Yeah.
So basically, like you said, your ID determines your status. There's 4 statuses. There's old timer, which means you've been has spent more time on the inside than on the outside. There's the lifer, which is you've lived at least 10 years or more in various prisons. Very knowledgeable and very generally respected, if not feared. Convict, which is pretty much the standard, typical prisoner, 2 or more years in prison. And then fresh meat, which is you're new to prisons, less than 1 year on the inside before being sentenced to the Gehenna, which is the ship.
Yeah, you get about a 40% chance to get the convict.
Yeah.
So
you pretty much can determine which you're going to be getting by the first number in your ID, even though it's a 7-digit number. If the first number is a 0, you're an old timer. If it's a 1 to 3, you're a lifer. 4 to 7, you're a convict, and 8 to 9, you're a fresh meat. So on top of that, the other 6 digits of the number are important, but we'll get into that in traits because that's interesting. But yeah, so depending on what you are, you get. So here's something I love about this system, and some people are going to hate about this system. You kind of gotta go in without a concept in mind because of the way you generate your attributes.
You can't go in planning to make a melee focused character necessarily, because everything is random rolls, and if you get old timer or fresh meat and you roll a 1, well, you get a 1.
Yeah. So
if you have convict or lifer, you get a 3 on your prowess.
In which case you still probably shouldn't be fighting.
Yeah, exactly. But those are still by far the best if you plan to have, in general, the highest average stats.
Yes. So the thing is all of your attributes are going to be rated from 1 to 10. All of these, the ways that you can generate. So basically, depending on how long you've been in there, how long you've been in the clink, determines what you're going to be rolling for your attributes. And here's the thing, like I said, you can't go in with a concept in mind. I had one time when I ran it back in college, I had a guy who's like, I'm going to play a murderer and be a psychopath. It's going to be cool. It's going to be great. I'm going to be so evil. And then he rolled his stats and had just terrible prowess. But he didn't back down from this concept and just was the worst fighter of all time. And insisted on keep on trying to do it. It just wasn't working. But, someone like my wife, same game though, my wife went in without really a concept, rolled her stats up, and was like, wait, I could make just a wheelin' dealin' sort of like economic person, like merchant sort of person, and like played it like that and had a blast, even though she doesn't normally play that sort of character.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those systems that without GM fiat, it encourages you to try different things.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love it. Like, some people are going to hate this because they want the build, which you're going to have a hard time with in this system. If you're so insistent upon a certain thing, you're going to hate that you can't build it to be exactly what you want. But if you go in saying, I'm going to go with what the dice give me and build off of that, then you're going to be able to play some cool stuff. And you might be able to play something outside your normal comfort zone, which I think is pretty great because it encourages you to expand your character horizons. So
it would be interesting if I ended up getting forced to play a talking character, because I am terrible at those.
Exactly. So let's go over the attributes real quick. So you got prowess. That's your fighting. Your reflexes prowess is your strength and your fighting and your resilience. It's pretty much all your physical, like beefy boy stuff rolled up into one stat. Reflexes, all of your, dex, speed, all that stuff rolled up into one stat, and your defense. Wit is your intelligence. Willpower is exactly what it sounds like. Social is exactly what it sounds like. And then intimidation is exactly what it sounds like, which is a little weird because I'm kind of surprised that they just made that an entire attribute. But since they don't have skills, I guess it makes sense.
Well, I think they did it that way because the system is so based around the whole um,
Prison thing, yeah.
prison gang, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so they wanted to especially emphasize the ability to deal with that.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said, different you I've been sitting on this image for a while now of this little table, but like we said, different prisoner statuses give you different dice rolls. So like fresh meat doesn't have has 1d, you roll 1d10 for like 4 of your stats, which isn't great. But you do have better willpower than anybody else, and you have decent wits.
Hmm.
Um, and it gives you access to some special traits. We'll get into that in a second. Convict is the standard. That is 1d8 plus 2 for everything across the board. And that's pretty much your standard prisoner, so it makes sense. Lifer gets some interesting stuff. They don't really have very good willpower, but they do have pretty good for all the other stats. Old Timer doesn't have good prowess, doesn't have good willpower. But oh boy, you will not
Yeah,
get below a 5 in wit, social, and intimidation, and your reflexes are still pretty okay.
yeah.
But then there's also the gauges. You know what? I think now might be a good time to talk about the gauges, just because it's not going to
Yeah,
make sense otherwise.
those damn things.
Okay. So the
Oh,
Ludovico gauges are basically your sort of, it's kind of your sanity mechanic, but
well, it's more than just that. There is a specific sanity gauge,
well, I
insanity
well,
gauge.
it's a sanity gauge, but spread out, but split up into 3 gauges to make it make a little bit more sense. It's you have 3. You have despair, you have guilt, and you have insanity. It's sort of all of your mental stresses put into 3 gauges that go from 1 to 10. Um, despair, uh, despair start. You have your despair, which is your level of tension,
Yeah,
anxiety, and terror. Um, and it goes up as you like have like fear inducing events, extradimensional creatures, bad encounter, other thing, whatever, any sort of fear
lights going
induced
out
reaction.
suddenly.
Yeah. um I think we have a list of things here. So like facing overwhelming odds, facing sure death, comrades taken down in combat, half party killed or incapacitated, last man standing, trapped in an imminent danger, lights go out suddenly, resisting confrontation, resisting/confronting a custodian, etc. Just all sorts of things can give you despair. And this goes for all the gauges. As they tick up, you start having penalties and bad things come into play. You could freeze up. You could have all sorts of nasty things happen. And if any of them top out, uh, that can sometimes mean death, but it always means that you're going to spawn that a demon's going to spawn near your location. Uh,
Mm,
and it's
that always makes it fun.
and
Those
it's
things are nasty.
They are very nasty. We'll get into them later. And they're always related to which gauge topped out. So there is despair demons, there's guilt demons, and there's insanity demons. It's nutballs. But this is where the horror comes in. This is the horror mechanic, and
Yep.
I like it because it's like less of just like a spin down counter that sanity is in like Call of Cthulhu. It's a little bit more spread out. It's a little bit more based on like what you're encountering, and the effects are different.
And
There's all
you can
sorts of nasty
recover
stuff.
from despair just by not having anything bad happen to you for a while.
Yeah,
I think it's every 24 hours, it goes down by one.
yeah. Guilt has like all of them have a way of removing it. It's just some are harder than others, but usually the ones that are harder to raise are also hard to lower.
Guilt, it's atoning, apologizing,
Yeah, guilt
doing things to resolve the guilt.
guilt is really easy to get rid of, but it's also really easy to accumulate. If you're if
Unless
you're
you have
if
the
you're
right traits.
if you're being an absolute bastard, it's really easy to accumulate.
If you have the right traits, you don't really get guilt.
I mean, with the right traits, you don't get guilt, but also if you're playing your character more heroically and not like a complete asshole, it's also you can usually avoid it for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the oh yeah, and that's the other thing is whenever you face any of these circumstances that might cause you to accumulate in your gauges, you roll against your willpower. And if you fail that roll, then you gain the guilt, or you gain whatever gauge is appropriate.
Yeah. Once it reaches 10.
Once it reaches 10, you're in trouble. I actually had a guy top out his despair in one game. His character had a heart attack and died. Just
Is that on the table?
That's on the table.
Oh god.
Let me see. I think it's in the GM stuff.
Yeah, I have the
where is it?
bookmarks open so I can get down to that section, but I didn't realize.
Oh yeah, it's nasty. It's really nasty. All right, let me see. Ludovico gauges. Here we go. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dead cannot be revived.
Yep, here we go. Icy Terror. You hit 10,
Sure.
automatic manifestation, and +1 insanity. In addition, the character must make a willpower check or lose 1d6 prowess for 1d4 hours. A character brought to 0 prowess by this dies of a heart attack. So yeah, this guy was mostly a sort of social merchant character, so he had really low prowess. He unfortunately failed that willpower check, just died on the spot. Luckily, it's pretty easy to generate a new character, which honestly is pretty great because this game can be deadly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, that's always a worry, you know? You can just straight up die. You could, like, if you have guilt, you know, you can just run away. Must make a willpower check to act at all short of running away for 1d4 hours. You know, insanity, same thing. Honestly, despair is the worst. Despair will kill you right away. But,
yeah.
And all of these also cause a manifestation of a demon, which is terrible. But we'll get into that later.
Well, the worst thing is although it's also a good thing. The gauge will not drop until the manifestation is dealt with.
Yeah.
In one manner or another, which
Yeah.
means you can actually sit there and abuse that by not letting the manifestation go away.
Right.
And for something like despair, if you get through the prowess without an issue, you can keep yourself at 10 despair, no problem. As long as you can get by with the other fear effects.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You've built up.
So in addition to rolling all of your prisoner type, determining what you roll for your attributes, it also determines how much you have in various Ludovico gauges. So despair always starts at 0 for everybody. The amount of guilt you have is dependent on how long you've been in prison. Fresh meat, of course, have the least, and old timers and lifers have the most, with convicts falling in between. Also, though, the other problem with old timers is, despite having really good rolls for their attributes, they also start with 1 insanity, which sucks.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to get rid of insanity.
Yeah. However, there is builds that you might want to have insanity, but that's another matter. We'll get to that later.
Yep.
That's a whole thing that we could get into.
Which I have a few things to talk about related to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And everyone has standardized health. You only get 10 health. It's not a lot of health. You could die
in a single attack
very easily in this game until you get some XP and get your health up, which you can. But yeah, 10 health. It's not a lot, and we'll get into why that's not a lot. Like, an explosion does 4d6 health to everyone in blast area. That could just kill you. Right out.
Kill everyone.
A fire is 1d6 health per turn of exposure. Like, holy shit. It's bad. You're like, this game is dangerous. It's relatively quick to roll up a character, but this game is deadly. It is scary. So, yeah, it's a horror system. It's definitely a horror system. But I like it when a game makes it tense and scary. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be that good of a horror. Okay.
So this part
you want to talk
is
about
where
build points?
Yep, this part is where it is the counter to the attributes. The better you roll on the attributes, the less you get in build points, which are what you use to buy traits. So say you roll average, which I'll say is about 35.
36 to 4. 28
Well,
to
that's
35 is 500 build points.
So you would have 500 points. But say you rolled amazing. You got 55. You'd only have 350 points to buy traits. But if you rolled absolutely terrible and only got 12, like minimum, you'd have a full 600 to buy whatever you needed.
Granted,
and that would be a lot of stuff.
Back in college, when we tried this out, I did have my white hat munchkin friend basically point out that amount of build points is really not worth how low your stats are going to be at that point.
Oh, I'm sure.
If you're basically, he said, I think he was like, if you're rolling less than that 28 to 35 range, I think they're probably more likely to 36 to 43. If you're rolling below that, you might as well just start over, because it's gonna be,
I'm sure
it's gonna be a rough time.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna drop really easy. You won't be able to get away from anything. You won't be able to do anything because all your rolls are gonna fail.
Exactly. So at which point it's not worth playing the character.
Yep. Unless you really are determined to get yourself killed. Or try.
Or you want to play or if you want to be scared shitless. Like, it could be really fun to have like the whole group play just
if you want to piss your entire group off by constantly filling your despair and all of that, go ahead and do it.
I mean, it could be fun to have do like a one shot where everybody has just that massively low attribute scores. Just try to survive as long as possible.
I don't even think you can get that without being fresh meat.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so the next part, why don't you talk about conviction record? That's the next part.
So, conviction record is what you were thrown in for. You get a free attribute bonus, which I believe is after you get your starting build points.
Yes. It is basically your class.
Your class. And then you get a free trait. Mm-hmm. And this
from a list of them.
Yes, from a list. It's 5 per class per record.
And they're all related to the particular.
Which one you pick is essentially saying why you were thrown on the ship.
And all of the stuff is all the traits from that are tied to it.
Yep. So say you were thrown on the ship for being a murderer.
Let's say what your options are. You have
murderer,
which is all the violent offenders. So
yep.
So this included not only killers but also those deemed quote unquote predisposed for killing, and anyone or anything that glorified the use of violence in any form.
You have vice offenders, which is drugs, sex, hell, probably rock and roll.
Yeah, probably. Particularly despised by the puritanical new regime, these constitute everything from hardcore drug addicts to rapists and child molesters to pornographers, pimps, and prostitutes. Soon, anyone who owned any sort of material made contraband under the new regime was promptly labeled a vice offender and shipped off into space. So, Sorry, man. Did you have that one Playboy covered Playboy magazine under your bed? Well, sorry, now you're going to space.
That you forgot about from 30 years ago.
Yeah, you're gone now. And those have all things related to usually either like merchant stuff or like seducing or other things like that.
Yep, they're the talking. Well, they're one of the
the
classes
talkers
that can be good at talking. The other one is dissident.
Yeah.
They're protesters. They were underground fighters. They were actually those are mainly the two that it really mentions.
And literally anyone who opposed the new regime, whether it be
Yeah.
through protests or through
politicians,
like legitimate politicians who just didn't like it. You're just gone.
Yep.
And that gives you all sorts of like talky stuff. Like the vice offender is more like merchant / seduction sort of talky, whereas this is straight up like leadership persuasion sort of talky.
It does have military training because soldiers were listed under that too.
Yes, indeed.
Then there's
It's
anarchists.
it's more like a guerrilla fighter / terrorists. That's why they have military training.
These are they're more of a mix.
Anarchists, yeah, they're sort of a catch-all.
Yep, they're for anything that wasn't covered under the others. Because it's got hacking, it's got public menace, it's got sociopath.
Yeah.
In the free traits, I mean, it's a mix.
Yeah, so if you wanted to play a hacker, this is the one to do it under.
At least if you want the free trait as hacking.
Yeah. And hacking does have its uses aboard the ship, considering it's like a spaceship and lots of things
that's fully controlled by an AI.
Yeah, being able to hack is very, very useful. But yeah, there's all sorts of weird stuff under this. You get plus to wits or intimidation. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do with that one. But yeah, and those are your class choices. It covers a wide range of characters, everything from like not really criminals to hardcore criminals.
And like I was saying earlier, like if you took murderer and then for your free trait you chose military training, that essentially sets your character as you were military. Of some sort. And you got thrown on the ship because you were military.
Yeah.
Why specifically? That you spoke out, whatever. It does not, but you were military in the past.
Yeah.
And that sets your background.
Like it says here, for examples, a former soldier, veteran of a brutal war in the colonies where civilians were as much targets as enemy soldiers and tanks, and cities / villages, the battlefields.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
or
like
you can
psychopath,
come out. And you can come out a psychopath.
Yeah, like a lunatic who poisoned people just to see if the police could track him down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like the soldiers, yeah, you could be someone who got PTSD from this horrible war and then just got labeled a criminal and sent off to space. But yeah, so there's all sorts of stuff, and like we said, you kind of want to build your character towards what you roll. I had like the example guy who wanted to play, who was dead set on playing a killer, played a killer, had a low prowess, got a +1 to it, still bad. Just wasn't worth it.
You can get an 11 capped, and even then, that still gives you a chance of failure.
Yeah.
On rolls.
So let's get into the traits now. This is where all the fun is, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is where a lot can change with your character.
Oh yeah. Let's see. So there is.
I'm trying to find the table. There we go. It's in the middle of the thing.
Yeah. So what's cool about traits is there's a ton. There's a ton you can pick from. There are all sorts of stuff that really modifies how your character plays, as well as gives you also. This is where all your fun abilities are, and they range. There's a few different types. They're sort of on these tables. They're grouped by what they sort of are. You got background, you got social, you got psychology, combat, and aberrant. The background aberrant. Yeah. The background is sort of like yeah, exactly what it sounds like. It's sort of what you were before. That sort of adds into how you're able to do things. Oh yeah, and the other cool thing is that of the uh, all of the traits have different costs based on what your conviction record is,
yeah.
what your class is. So yeah, when
And
you're
some of them you flat out cannot take if you
if you're
had a
that
certain
class, yeah. So
like
if
a
you want
murderer cannot get hacking. Period.
exactly. So if you want to play your character a certain way, that should also be a consider. Like there's definitely some overlap in the classes in terms of at least those bonuses to your attributes and starting traits.
Yeah.
But there is significant difference in what you can buy in terms of traits and how much it will cost. So that should be definitely something that you're considering when you're making your character. Now,
if there is a specific trait you have your eye on, make sure you can get that trait with the class you're looking at.
And potentially look into making sure it's cheap for the class you're playing as.
Yeah.
So yeah,
or at least you're willing to pay the price.
The other thing is there's all sorts of fun things. Like a lot of these also are locked behind. Some of these are locked behind certain criminal types. Like pretty face can only be taken by fresh meat. You can't take it as anything else other than someone who's just like a really, really recent criminal, which is interesting. There's other things too. Some fun ones like the combat ones all give you various modifications to your fighting, so that way you can get have more options in combat and do a little bit better. The aberrant ones all are weird. And a lot of them are heavily tied to your prisoner ID number. Here's the thing about prisoner ID number.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them require you to have rolled certain things for your prisoner ID number, which can lead to some really funny things and also fury for people who want to build that perfect character, because sometimes the numbers just won't add up. Like beneficial glitch.
I was just going to bring that up if you didn't.
Beneficial glitch requires you to have 3 odd numbers in a row in your ID. Something that you roll out randomly on a D10. A D10 7 times. So if you don't get that, well, sorry, you can't get beneficial glitch. But beneficial glitch is fantastic because you start with extra money. And it also gives you weird stuff like... It says, in addition, from this point on, at the warden's discretion, odd and sometimes random beneficial effects may occur. Examples might include doors opening for the convict that wouldn't normally open for anyone else. Smokes and food dispensers randomly distribute their contents to the convict as she passes by, etc. It's just weird. And it requires such a very oddly specific thing to get it.
Mm-hmm. If you have the ability to get that one and you decide you want to play this, get it.
Get it. It's so okay. I will say I'm gonna bring up 2 of my favorite builds in this game that were in the last campaign I played in, or I ran. We basically had 2 guys who both rolled low combat, but had relatively high sociability and some other stuff. So what they ended up doing, and they also rolled the stuff required to get like beneficial glitch and other things like that, which allowed them to they built their characters to max out as much money they could start with as possible out the gate. They were like normally, so basically whenever you whenever you stop buying traits, you get the excess of your build points, your XP, in starting money, which is smokes, because everybody trades in cigarettes as cash on the prison ship. So normally you start with maybe like 50 to 100 smokes if you're lucky. So a lot of times you'll start with 0. They started in excess of I think they had like a couple thousand out the gate. from how much
I almost want to figure out their build myself.
it was between two of them. They had like they pooled their money, their starting money together in order to basically make a syndicate. It was glorious, but but they started with together. They started with like a couple thousand, I think. It was insane. And then the other guy found that if you took these two, if you took these two traits called large cavity, which lets you hide anything. Like normally, it's difficult to hide things, but this lets you hide up to like a size 1 category thing. We can
item with
guess.
concealability bonus of -2, requiring no opposed check.
Yeah, so up to 2, -2, which is pretty big. That like includes
shotguns.
It's crazy. So that was large cavity. We all know where that's going. But then there's also one called smuggler, which effectively reduces the size of all things you're trying to hide by 1. So it turns out the highest an item's size can go up to is a 3. So he could smuggle literally anything in the game without it being noticed, including flamethrowers. It was just such nonsense. His name was Mr. Keister.
This story still makes me fucking laugh.
But yeah, there's also other stuff too. Medical knowledge if you want to be a doctor. There's orderly or trustee if you want to basically be someone who, is working for the prisons system essentially, which is kind of interesting. It definitely makes people hate you, but you can get some special benefits from being that way, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is really, it has its uses. It has some really...
It's a mixed bag because you will become not the enemy, but you will have a hard time dealing with people.
Other people, yeah. Because you're a sellout, essentially. You're a traitor.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, you get some good stuff from it. Like, there's definitely some benefits. And then I think we could also talk about some of these also give you bad things, but in return give you a chance to become psychic. We'll get into psychics later, maybe, but
that's something I plan to talk about.
If you want to play psychic, you gotta build towards it because it is difficult. Very difficult to make work.
And it has quite a few negatives attached to it because you have to keep your insanity above 5 or higher,
which really sucks. But hey, gives you a chance. It gives you some goods. It's like you get powers. That's really cool, especially in a system that's as grounded as this one. Having basically magic powers is really, really strong. So yeah, all sorts of traits. This is really where the meat of the character creation is. And where the meat of making improving your character is as well, because when you get XP, you spend it on traits. Your attributes can improve, but it's by buying these things called advanced traits, which you can't take at character creation, but you can buy with XP later, and that can and they are all the really cool. There's a lot of really cool ones in here.
There's some nasty ones too.
Yeah, there's some really good ones. There's some really nasty ones. You can get a demonic guardian, which is wild.
I think one of the meanest ones is demonic vengeance.
That's just
you evil. Die, you return as a demon.
It's just a fuck you to the rest of the party at that point, because there's no reason to take it other than to fuck your party over. But yeah, this is where you can get Awakened Psychic, which allows you to improve your psychic powers. You cannot
take that unless you've already manifested a psychic power once.
Right. You can get Doc, which allows you to do some healing, I believe. You can get Jury Rig, which lets you craft stuff. There's a whole crafting system, which is pretty great. And there's also other stuff that you can pick up to improve your attributes, which is great.
And
Uh,
if you are the kind of person to play a hacker, you'll want something like Robotician,
mhm.
so you can repair them and create your own Robo army.
Yeah, that's another thing. Or lobotomy and mental health, which will let you reduce those Ludovico gauges. Horrifying,
Insanity.
but
That's
great.
specifically for insanity.
Oh yeah, and extra health will let you get more, just straight up 10 more health for every time you take it.
Yes.
Fantastic and practically essential. But yeah,
There's also one where you can sacrifice. What is it actually?
flesh sacrifices.
Yeah, flesh sacrifice. I
Oh
don't think
yeah,
it's actual. Oh yeah, you have to murder somebody.
yeah. That gets
Depending on the willpower of the group, you summon a demon.
yeah. It's a very specific thing, and it's horrifying because it actually requires a specific personal goal. Which let's get into the personal goals because those are important.
Yeah. Those are one thing you and I definitely have some disagreements on.
Okay, so personal goals. Everyone has a personal goal.
And they can't really change.
No, they're always going to be the same. And they also determine how the GM dishes out bonus XP. If you play towards your goal, the GM will give you bonus XP for basically for good role playing. And they give you guidelines on what you should be doing as that goal to get those rewards. Now, here's the thing. They all have to be kept secret for one reason. The reason is because one of them is not like the others. So
No.
let's go over what they are. First is redemption. You want to clean your slate and be a good person and atone for your sins, essentially.
Or it'd be um brain fart. Holy warrior type thing.
Yeah, you want to be a good
Because
person.
you can also take redemption if you want to slaughter demons.
You still want to, like, the role playing suggestions are be a leader, lead by example, be brave, inspire heroics in others, do the right thing when you get the chance, even to your own detriment. Share with others, gain their trust. Just be a good person, be a hero.
Yep.
You know. Then there's power, which is just you want to acquire as much power on this ship as possible. You want to be on top. Which
Personal power.
Personal power. I mean, and that could be like, hey, rise to the top of a gang, or like join gangs, rise in authority, make choices that the group adheres to. Generally, make friends, followers, connections. Just build your personal power base.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's survival. You want to take survival?
It's survival and damnation that I would choose most likely.
Okay.
Survival is your goal is literally, it says simply to survive. You don't have a moral compass. Your goal is you. Look out for yourself.
Look out for number one.
Yup. Hoard. Don't feel bad about hoarding resources. You matter most.
Yep. Then
That is it. You get BP for
being selfish.
Being selfish. That's a very good way to describe
sure that
it.
You live, and that's all that matters. That you live.
Then there's escape, which pretty blunt. There, your goal is to get the fuck out.
Yeah, because there's a whole thing of like, there's got to be a way to escape Gehenna. Whether there's got to be
turn Gehenna around.
Turn Gehenna around. Get off the ship. Just get out of this situation one way or another.
Yep.
So like exploration is what's rewarded for you. Finding secret passages, avoiding encounters, finding forgotten access tunnels, learning more about the layout of the ship, etc. It's if you want to explore and get reward for it, this is a great goal.
And the one that would cause problems with the group, damnation.
This is the one why it's required for them all to be secret. Damnation is literally,
You work with the demons.
You literally work with the demons to screw everyone over.
The examples. You believe perdition is a time of judgment, there's no escaping it. Or You believe you're already damned, and a prominent place in hell will be reserved only if you prove yourself.
Yeah.
Gives you a good idea of what.
Role-playing suggestions is be subtle, tricky, clever, imitate another girl's motivations. If it helps, keep the other players off your trail. Keep your identity secret. If your companions find you, there's a good chance you're good as dead. Characters with this goal gain bonus XP awards for betraying other characters, causing mayhem and sowing chaos, allowing demons to kill others, and embracing their darker side when possible / profitable. It's basically play evil and play to
It's
the detriment of the rest of the party.
backstab the goal.
Yeah. So this one I have mixed feelings about because there's something just lovely about having a character who's just going to be an utter bastard and is doing their best to keep it hidden, because if they can keep it hidden, damn, that's good on them. And then but if they get found out, well, they're dead. They're going to be dead within a few moments because the rest of the party's going to fucking kill them. And then you roll up a new character. So it's kind of fun, but at the same time, it can be kind of dickish too, especially when you're, someone who is like if you're playing and then this guy suddenly backstabs you and now you have to roll up a new character, even though you like your character, that can suck. But
yes, my feelings on Damnation are kind of similar, but I'm really not as much of a fan of it unless most, if not everyone in the group is doing it, simply because I'm generally not a big fan of PvP with game tabletops in general.
The only reason I'm okay with it though is because it does add to the horror thing, because it adds that uncertainty not only with everything around you but your own party, and that is just so deliciously horror. It's so like on point for how horror is. It's just like everything is tense, everything is scary, you never know what's gonna happen, and having that one traitor is just that lovely wrinkle to the game that just gives it a little bit extra oomph.
Yeah, I've seen too many stories of people getting too attached to their characters, so something like that just makes me a little I kind of want to stay away from it.
Definitely not for everyone, and as as a GM, you can always just ban it. You can always just ban it. But like that flesh sacrifice one requires you to have Damnation to take it.
Yep, there's a bunch of them. Most of the demonic ones do.
Obviously, because you're playing Damnation, so yeah, of course it's gonna be banned unless you take Damnation. So in that same game that we had the wild characters, the Keisters.
Yeah.
During character creation, they were talking, and they started talking with some of the other players in the group. They're like, "Hey, what if we all took Damnation, but didn't tell one guy in the group?"
I would do that.
It's just like it just formed a cult, and then when he was like, "Wait, what's going on?" It's like, well, then we use human sacrifice.
I would do that.
Which I was like, don't, even though that's hilarious.
But I'm an asshole, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it would be, like, if you want to troll one person harder than ever, that would be a hilarious way to do it. Especially since everyone's just, like, pretending to not be evil, but then is being evil.
Even if that was the person getting trolled, my response would be, fuck you.
It's so good, though. So, yeah. That's pretty much it for character creation. There's also, but yeah, like it's simple. It's a quick character creation.
I mean, the longest part is picking your traits.
Even then, it goes really fast considering that you don't get that many points to work with. Like,
everything costs at least 100.
Everything costs at least 100. You get maybe 450 to 500 point. 500 or less points if you're playing a reasonable character. And everything costs at least 100, if not more. So you'll go through that within 3
or 4 picks.
3 or 4 picks, maybe less,
depending on what you pick. Yeah.
And then you're done. And then
And
you're
then
done.
the last big thing that I want to talk about is the psychic powers, which is something that I even went through all the extra books, scenarios to see if there are any extra psychic powers that were added in. There's no offensive power you
Wait, did
can
you get
get.
all the? Did you just get all the other books?
Yeah.
Okay, talk to me later about that. But yeah, like real quick though, I want to talk about items like
Oh,
the
yeah.
basic gear is fine. You know, I mean, gear is gear. It's
A lot of
whatever.
it's
But
quite
what's
literally said to be scrapped together.
gear is gear. A lot of it's scrapped together. But here's what's cool about it and what I really like. There is crafting, pretty decent crafting system, just because it's kept relatively simple. Like, you basically have a few different types of components you can get.
Yep.
Um,
You salvage.
you salvage, yeah, you can like if you want to play a crafting character, you totally can, and it's viable and probably a good idea too. If you have an attribute set up and build towards that, you could totally do some cool stuff with that. So you need certain types of salvage. They come in all sorts of types: capacitor, chemical, conductor, precision, pressurizing, rigid. You know,
Yeah.
it's wild. Like the GM will just have to tell you what you get.
And then
Precision.
depending on what you're trying to craft, it tells you what is required for.
It tells you what you need. It tells you what sort of tools that you need to build it, and how much time it takes to do so. And it's just like that's all it is. It's relatively simple, but it makes it feel like I think it makes it feel like a good crafting. You know,
You know,
it's not complicated.
how
It's
long does the
simple.
crafting actually take in this? Because that's
Uh,
one thing I've had an issue with a lot of systems is
six
the crafting takes
hours, 12,
forever.
6 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours. I'm just looking at some of them. 48 hours for basic tools, 72 hours for complex tools. But granted, you can reuse these,
Yeah.
and you
So
use
it's
them
not
to
so
craft.
it's variable depending on the specific item.
It's variable depending on the specific item. The more complex something is, the longer it takes. Like a work
Okay.
pass emulator takes 48 hours. Of course it does. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's an
But
electronic thing.
let me see. Let me see. A brass knucks takes 6 hours. A beat stick takes 6 hours. Let me see how long a shiv takes. Um. Oh yeah, shivs are pretty much one of your best most basic and best weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple. Actually, it's not a best weapon, but it's your bread and butter weapon. That takes 6 hours to make. It only requires one rigid component though, and then you're done.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I like it because it gives you a great reason to. It gives you. It's simple. You just need to. You just make the. You just spend the time, get your tools, spend the time, and get your materials. But it makes it like, yeah, I want to. If I'm playing a crafting character, I constantly want to be scrounging around for supplies and stuff, and that feels kind of cool. You know, it's Fallouty in a way. Like, you know, you're just like searching through, finding stuff, and being like, oh yeah, I got some rigids, and I got all this stuff, and now I can make stuff. You know, it just feels
Yeah.
good, and it's not overly complex to do it. It just is there and works, and that's kind of what I like about this system. Everything just feels like it's simple, it's there, it works.
So the psychic system. The
Yeah, let's go into psychics because
yes.
we've been avoiding this for a while. Oh boy.
The way it works is you build I'm trying to remember what the heck
Here we
it's
go.
called.
Is
The
it the
psychic power or potential or whatever.
psi
Um,
potential? Yeah.
yeah. You build that depending on traits. I think it starts at base 5%. And once you reach a certain
Despair
level
8.
of insanity,
No, it's despair.
despair? I thought it was
Any
insanity.
psychic potential. This means whenever a character with any psychic potential reaches despair 8 or greater, the chance exists.
Okay.
When this occurs, there's a chance each turn during extended stress or strained circumstances such as combat, facing a demon, etc., that the character will manifest a random psychic power.
Yes, you roll a D100 to see if you manifest it. If you roll your percent or lower, so if you haven't taken anything that boosts your chance, you have to get a 5 or lower.
Yeah.
But if you roll that, you then roll on your random psychic power tables, which is a D12. There's a handful of different things. Some do literally nothing but make a few flickering lights. Some destroy any weapon that's threatening you. Some let you dodge the next attack, and some destroy stuff.
Yeah. So let's just go straight to it. Basically, you
87
you
or
manifest you
89.
manifest you roll to manifest random psychic power.
Yeah.
No, and here's the thing. It needs to be your despair needs to be above 8 in order to manifest a random psychic power.
Unless you're an awakened.
And that's a percentile roll. But once you do, and you want to keep doing that, you then can pick up awakened psychic, which
And as long as your insanity is 5 or higher,
is that what
instead of instead of attacking, you can just roll on this chart, or you can purchase one of the psi powers.
Yeah. So you can so basically once you're awakened, you can just roll on the random thing whenever you want, in place of attacking, and also once you pick that up, you can also buy the various powers as traits,
which is clairvoyance, empathy,
ESP, psychometry, and telepathy.
Yep. Now, I really wish there was telekinesis.
Yeah, I think that's what isn't that what ESP is?
No.
Oh, you're right, huh?
Yeah, there's nothing that can be used for aggressive actions unless you're rolling on the random chart.
It's definitely, which, I mean, that's what keeps you using the random chart. Otherwise, why would you ever use it?
You could just make it weaker than the random chart.
Yeah, but I kind of do like keeping it to utility powers, you know? Not many systems really emphasize the use of utility stuff. On top of that, you also have a psi strength, and that sort of determines what your I believe that determines what you roll for your various powers.
No, that determines how powerful the power is.
Oh, it determines how powerful the power is, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing is, so when you get that by taking specific traits during character generation, like isolate or psychobaric treatment or other things like that. So again, this is why I said...
And for every psi power you pick up, you get it as well.
Exactly. So this is why I would said that if you want to play a psychic, there's build...
You need to plan for it.
You need to plan to do it, because you need to get your psi potential up to make sure that you could actually manifest it in the first place, and you need to get that psi strength up in order to make sure it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. But if you can get your psi strength up, your powers are going to be powerful.
You're going to be a powerhouse mage of sorts, and you're going to be kind of, if you can make it work, you can be a head and shoulders above any normal prisoner, just because you're kind of a mage. You may not be fighting necessarily, but you can do all sorts of stuff.
I know you wanted to go over the gang stuff. I will be right back.
Okay, well, I'll go over the gang stuff right now. So part of the whole, being in prison ship is there's gangs. There's gangs. Of course there's gangs. I actually really like these gangs, the gang idea here, because it's like, yeah, of course there's gangs in prison. Of course there's prison gangs. Now what this means though is that they act as various factions, but you can also join them, of course. But unlike most systems where it's like, oh, you joined a faction, you're part of the faction, you whiffle waffle, whatever, they straight up tell you exactly what it takes to join the gang. The entry, like they tell you what the goals of the gang are. They tell you exactly how to get into the gang, and they tell you what you get at every level of the gang, of where your position in the gang is. They have mechanical benefits for all of that stuff. Like, for example, let's just look at one of them, the family. They're basically like the mafia. They're the mafia on the ship. When to get into the family, you must either kill a member of a rival gang or buy entry with 1,000 smokes or the equivalent in train goods. So that's how you get in. But then that's another thing is you get standing within the gangs, and they go through probationary, which is you just joined, to junior standing, senior standing, and then the inner circle. And that's your level of involvement with the gang. You want, by doing various stuff, spending time building contacts, doing missions for them, doing other things like that, you can move up and up and up. And so for the family at junior standing, you get the cold-blooded trait for free. Hey, free traits. That's great. Or if you already have it, you gain 50 XP instead, as well as a shiv as standard equipment. So free gear, free traits, all good stuff. At senior standing, you gain your choice of either +1 social or intimidation. So free attribute increases. That's crazy right there, because that's pretty expensive down the line. And then at the inner circle, you gain +100 XP bonus whenever you complete a mission that furthers your gang's goals. So yeah, just lots of stuff, like direct mechanical benefits for joining gang. It's really it really encourages you to get involved with the factions, get involved with what they're doing, and just sort of like gives the GM a lot to work with by like joining these guys, and you get mechanical benefits, and it's really becomes a lot easier to sort of say, okay, the gang wants you to go do this. That's a great hook, and it's just sort of built into the game. So it's great for the GM. It's great for players. It's great for everybody. I really like the gangs. I think it's a great little subsystem in here. I think it's really fitting with the whole space prison thing that they got going on. And there's a lot of gangs. Let me see here. How many gangs we got? We got the Daughters of Slaughter, Embracers, Family, Fittest, Furies, Jailhouse Giants, Jaybirds, Lions Army, Protectors, Rimshake Rippers, Skinheads, and Ultramax Psychos. Lots of gangs to join. Some of them are just straight up awful, but that's another matter. So last thing, let's get into the demons. We've been holding off on them long enough. Let's get into these monsters. They're bad. They are terrifying. When the gauges get too high, they manifest, and they can manifest a lot of them. Like depending
Not
on
only that, but when a manifestation occurs, there's always a secondary effect, which can be pretty nasty as well.
Exactly. So the thing is depending on how high your gauge level is, that determines what manifests. So if you just hit 10 on the nose, you get one low power demon, which isn't too hard to deal with. But because you can get, these gauges can increase by a lot at once, depending on how much you exceed it by, then that can spawn some really nasty things. Especially since I think it combines everyone's if a bunch of people in the same room or the same area all go through, have the same gauge max out, it tallies up all of their exceedings in order to determine what spawns. So if you're in a big group and everyone suddenly has a lot of despair, oh boy, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then there's secondary effects. There's all sorts of friggin' crazy stuff. They're usually there to tell you that a demon's coming. They're a sort of a warning sign. They can be D10 minutes before manifestation, D10 turns before manifestation, or 1 turn before the demon manifests. So if something weird happens, Yeah.
Get out.
Get out. Run.
Run.
uh, it may not be enough though. um, and like, yeah, there's demons of despair, there's demons of guilt, and there's demons of insanity. There's all sorts of nasty things. They're all laid out here. Let's see if we can find. Let me see if I can find a good.
The
Oh,
weakest demon of despair, the Devourer, has a
is that?
prowess of 8, reflex 6,
Yeah,
health 15, movement 8.
yeah. I'm not sure if that's the weakest, but
That's
it's a
the
pretty
basic
basic
one.
one. It's a basic one. It sucks. Like these things suck. These things suck a lot.
Not
Oh,
only
boy.
that, but
Or how about
if you look at them, you have to make a despair check.
or let's talk about the death slithers. Those things are the worst. I actually had one fight. They only have 10 health, which isn't too bad. But I had one fight a group, and like a group of like I think the party was like 6 guys, and then they had like 5 more NPCs, and it took them forever to kill this thing. It nearly killed their fighter repeatedly because of its ability. It has a bite attack. So it has a bite attack. It's small, which makes it allows like multiple of it to two to occupy the same square. It's fast. It's got 9 reflexes, so it's hard to hit. It's hard as shit to hit. But here's the really nasty thing. If a death slither remains... Okay, it has 2 things here. Latch and choke. If a death slither's bite is successful, it latches onto the target. It must maintain this hold, i.e. remain alive, for 3 turns to use its choke ability. If a death slither remains latched onto a target for 3 turns, on the 4th turn, it automatically deals 1d4 health damage. If a natural 4 is rolled, another d4 is rolled and added to the total. And again, if another 4 is rolled, etc. A victim killed by this ability is decapitated, no recovery possible, and the head will rise as a death slither in 1d10 turns. As you can probably guess, this is awful. Because you can just suddenly have like a whole army of these critters just messing up your party, just as like with each party member that falls, which is bad, and because you've got less people to fight with, another enemy spawns that is just going to murderize you. These things are the worst. I hate them so much. Let's see. There's also Next for Sext. Those things are really nasty. Nightmare Weavers. Oh god, those things are horrifying. Like, the art in this is horrifying, too. Like, oh my god, these demons are just awful to look at. I give props to the
Whoever
artists. They did a
did
great
art
job.
for this stuff could work at Doom or id Software on Doom.
They did a great job. Oh yeah, panic feeders. Those are terrifying. Those are really terrifying. Like, let's look at this. 90 health. 90.
Eater of the Damned is ridiculous.
Prowess 12. Get fucked. And it has a whole bunch of abilities. We're not even going to go into that, but they're just... You're going to die. You're going to die. Yeah. Eater of the Damned. There's so many things. And those are just the despair ones. There's Demons of Guilt, which are also terrible. Ugh, I hate guilt worms. They're just gross. They are gross. Corruptors, which just the art is hilarious on that. It reminds me of the floating heads in Rick and Morty. Show me what you got. You got these things. The wraiths are terrible. Sorrow leeches, which I think are just shadows that attack you, which are terrible. Soul shadows. Are you still there, Dead? Are you still
I'm
there?
here.
Okay, good.
I'm going through these things, looking at the...
Ugh. Everything's bad. But these are like, all of them are terrible. And then there's the insanity demons, which have their own special mechanic that whenever they manifest, they also have a paradox occur, which can be a range of things. I think the funniest thing that ever happened was At the end of the first module, you fight a demon. I believe. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, it's a Violator. This horrible tentacle slug thing. A Violator, when manifested, begins growing in the body of the character who manifested it. Within a matter of hours, it grows to maturity inside. Until at last, it rips free from its host, killing her and leaving her body in bloody ribbons like a serpent discarded skin.
Oh, God.
So,
nice.
So yeah, paradoxical. A Violator has a 50% chance of being able to generate a paradox once per encounter. So, slight spoilers for the end of the first module. You fight a dude in an Ultramax cell, which is basically a giant cylinder with all the cells on the walls of the cylinder. You fight him at the bottom of it. This thing is I think 10 stories. And when you kill him, he becomes a Violator. So, I roll to see. This happened twice in the same exact way in this module. The 2 times I ran it. Roll to see if a paradox happens. It happens. I roll on the table. It gets gravity reversal.
Oh, God.
Gravity is reversed in the immediate area of the encounter. All creatures / characters immediately fall to the new ground, possibly suffering damage from the drop.
Possibly?
This persists until the demon is killed, at which time the gravity reverts to normal. So the first time I ran this, I got a TPK, because what happened was they all... the gravity reversed, they all fall to the top of the thing. A bunch goes splat from the fall damage. The Violator falls up. It goes splat from the fall damage.
Then everyone falls
falls back down and dies. TPK, even though they technically won.
That's ridiculous.
The worst part, though, was that part of the standard starting gear for all convicts is a little kit, and one of those things in the kit is a magnetic bracelet that will let you stick to any metal surface in this ship in case of a hull breach. So they could have just stuck it to the floor and been fine.
Nobody remembered.
No one remembered. So the second time I ran it, and the exact same thing happened. I was like, hey guys, you have these metal bracelets. You have these magnetic bracelets. Use them. Unfortunately, the Violator didn't die that time, and they had to just take pot shots at it until it died because no one could do anything. It couldn't kill them, and they couldn't kill it, and it was really awkward.
Jesus.
So yeah, there is. So yeah, that's pretty much the system. There's all sorts of awful monsters. They have a nice little set of other threats, including the robotic custodians. Well, no, the robotic custodians and just other criminal convict stat blocks. If you just need if you need some quick stuff, and yeah, it's a good overall. I think it's a great system. It's simple but effective. If you're wanting something different and you're wanting to sort of test your role-playing ability, branch out into something new, but you don't want anything too heavy, this is a great place to start, in my opinion. Granted, it's a little bit harder to run, I think, because I think just prison stories are a little bit trickier to do unless you really know sci-fi horror. Then you probably could do it.
This is one where where the DM, I don't remember which just one calls it, needs to be a good storyteller.
Yeah. Alternatively, you go and you pick up the adventure modules they have, because they have a bunch of adventure modules, and you can just run through them. There's some really good. They're really good. They're really well done. They're fun, and I think they make for a great way to sort of get started with the system if you want to just try it out. So yeah, check this out. Check this out on RPG Object. If you just Google Abandon All Hope RPG, it'll pop up. RPG Objects is still selling the books, all the PDFs, and selling the physical books.
As I say, I know Drive Through RPG has no physical books for anything right now.
The physical of this is available on Amazon. I would check it out. And yeah, it's a good system. I would highly recommend it. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. It's a lot more reliant on good RP than some other systems, or at least acceptable RP. um, but it's definitely a good one.
It's definitely. I think it's a good. I might even go so far as to say it's a good starter system.
Personally, I'd rather have somebody have some experience before they played something like this.
That's fair. It's a good mechanical starters. It's a good starter system mechanically. Theming wise, it's a little bit of a trickier one to get into because it's not as broadly accessible of
Yeah.
a style. But it is very accessible in terms of mechanics. If you want something that's a little bit simpler, a little bit more accessible, but still has depth that you can dig into and have fun with down the road, this is a great system for that. It's very accessible, it's accessible but with depth. It's kind of like Smash Bros.
Okay, so
So yeah, I think that's where we'll call it for the podcast. If you have any recommendations for games to look at, leave it in the comments. And I guess that's where we'll end it. So thank you for listening, and tune in next time, and we'll take a look at another system.
yep. See you guys
y'all
then.
later.